Hi, everyone. I wanted to welcome you all to IA for Life. My name is Dan Gorchynsky. I'm a UX architect at American Eagle Outfitters in Pittsburgh. We're here to talk to you today about how to use and apply UX and IA principles to your everyday life. When Raelin, Julia, and I found out that the theme of this year was curiosity, again, we felt this related to our topic perfectly and how to look at the world around you a bit differently. As UX designers and researchers, we are observers and interpreters of human behavior. Again, there is that perfect match. A little context behind IA in Life is this was the brainchild of a chat the three of us had at the end of a conference a couple years back. As we were speaking, we found so many links between UX and everyday life that we felt this had to be a talk. We wanted to share it with everybody. For the purpose of this talk, we're going to focus the lens on dating and how UX principles are applicable to that. But before I get ahead of myself, I'll hand it off to Julia and Raelin to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Costa. I'm a UX designer and researcher and Pittsburgh native. I'm excited to be talking today at the conference here. And I've done UX work at a variety of companies, including PNC Bank, American Eagle, and PayPal. And in terms of dating, I'm perhaps the least qualified to talk about this topic because I've been with the same person for almost 15 years. So I haven't been on a date in a very long time. But I find the process very interesting, especially dating apps and how those have been incorporated in recent years. So I've asked, I asked Raelin and Dan a lot of questions about this topic. So that's one of the things we're going to talk through today.
Hi, and I'm Raelin Musuraca. I'm an assistant teaching professor at Carnegie Mellon University. Started that about 3 years ago, and before that, I have a long career here in Pittsburgh, and most recently as a UX researcher at Bank of New York Mellon and American Eagle Outfitters. Most importantly, I am a dating veteran with 6 years of experience now, but thankfully, the last 6 months, I think it's over. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Julia, when we were talking about UX and dating, what are some of the UX principles that came to mind?
Yeah, so when you think about UX principles, the first one that comes to my mind is meeting the user's needs, understanding your users. That process of understanding the user and designing products and services to meet their needs is really what's at the core of UX. But I think there's a question that can sometimes be missed or an assumption that's made around who really are your users. Who are the primary targets, those primary users that need to be the focus of your designs? So Dan, you have a lot of experience designing for many different types of users. Have you ever struggled with this type of question in a UX project?
Yeah, it's actually a current project comes to mind. And again, it's something to always keep at the forefront when you're designing for these experiences. So American Eagle does have a curbside pickup experience. And kind of the project I was working on was enhancing that experience through the app and allowing the customer to tell the associate that they're on their way to then be able to park in a designated spot to get their order. So again, with COVID happening, the need for safe and efficient pickup experiences was always at the forefront and providing that best customer experience while getting their product to them as fast as they can. When we were going through the discovery and user testing of this initial digital experience through the app, the associate came to the forefront as such a key player in this experience. So while we were initially focused on the customer, we found out that the associate is just as important because they're the ones that have to be able to digest all of these notifications from the customer, prep the order, and then be able to run it out to the car when the customer has arrived. It varies from store to store. So again, this was an exciting challenge to take on, but something else that you had to take into account of what the customer is experiencing at all these different stores, as well as then the associate being able to grab the order and then take it out. At times, it's a 10-minute walk from where the storefront is inside a mall to where the designated parking spot is for the customer.
Yeah, that's really interesting to thinking about how you need to, through this process of the project you found, you really need to design for the associate, not for that end customer.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think, thinking about how you can apply this UX perspective to dating and relationships in general, I think sometimes people can, in dating, you think about the other person in the relationship as the user or the primary focus, because they're the ones, consuming the information about you if you're on dating apps or making those judgments of whether to accept or reject. But if you apply this UX principle of thinking about who, meeting the user's needs, who is really your primary user, you can see this from a different perspective. Where I have seen people have more success is when they view themselves as the primary user when dating, not the people they are dating. I think this is especially true with it for dating apps, when your profile can become kind of a product that you design to try to attract others. So Dan, I know you have used dating apps in the past. So have you seen this in your own behavior and your own experience with dating apps?
Yeah, so also happy to say that I'm very happily in a relationship for 2 years now, but kind of remembering from my time with the dating apps and such is that a lot of times, and I think everyone can relate, you go on a date and it's all wrong for both parties. You meet that person in person right away and you're like, nope, this is not what my digital experience with them was. And again, I think that's partly because of inaccurate profiles and those conversations you had kind of in the pre-dating period, when you're kind of just chatting, sending messages to one another, and then make that step to meet someone in person. So I think kind of a common misstep is making a profile a certain way to attract a certain person. Kind of, Julia, as you were describing it, you want to make sure you aren't kind of prescribing a solution by tweaking your profile, because doing that right off the bat, you're already going to get only a certain person who's maybe going to be responding to your profile.
Yeah, Dan, that's definitely a lesson that I learned in terms of the profile, right? At first, people told me, put on fancy clothes, dress up, put on makeup. I was attracting the wrong kind of person. And after a lot of bad dates, I realized I needed a profile that just reflected myself, who I wanted and who I wanted to be with. So I ended up posting very natural pictures of me hiking, biking, and playing with my dogs. And I think that really paid off most recently for myself.
Well, that's great. And you said 6 months already and things are still great. But I think kind of like, just like in UX, you don't always know what the solution is. So again, it's keeping that open mind, but also making sure you don't lack kind of flexibility, honesty, and open-mindedness in finding out what that kind of endpoint may be. And if you're not, you'll never find that proper solution.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think the ideas you're talking around, don't prescribe a solution, don't prescribe a certain type of person, reminds me of another UX principle of, focus on finding and understanding the problem during your design and research, not on the solution. So keep your eyes open to the possibilities of what is really causing the symptoms that you might be seeing from a UX perspective, not just focusing on what those symptoms are. So Raelin, you're our resident UX research expert here. So have you ever run into this issue in a UX research project?
Oh, all the time. And I think the key is really keeping your research very open-ended and keeping your eyes open while you're doing the process. For example, at BNY Mellon, we had a project that was about fixing the invoicing process. And there were so many issues very tactically that was really happening in the short term. It would have been too easy to narrowly focus on those. But I convinced people to really step back and do customer journey mapping workshops, both with internal employees and customers. And this took time and this was expensive, but it really helped us look at the problem from a much bigger angle. And it turned up two things that were very important: that the invoicing issues were just symptoms of a core problem. And we could have just fixed those issues, but we would have never solved the actual problem, which was traced all the way back to a poor customer onboarding process. That eventually became its own strategic initiative due to uncovering these findings. But we also, because we had our eyes open, particularly working with the customers, we saw that the customers weren't using the invoices just to pay their balance with us, but they were using it to do financial projections. And that we saw that there was a need for data that we could provide. And in that, we could actually create a product that would allow us to be innovative and differentiate ourselves from the other banks. So by researching broadly, by diverging, you can explore what your user is really trying to accomplish rather than the thing they are doing right now. In other words, what is the job to be done for the user? And I think that relates to another UX principle, understanding what is really success for your users. Right, Julia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I've seen this principle ring true in customer journey mapping work that I've done. Especially if you look at what the company can be focused on, they look at the journey kind of from the perspective of sales. That's what they're metricing, that's what they're measuring. But if you look at the customer journey through the customer's eyes, and what they see as successful, that journey doesn't end at the point of purchase. It's all about how their experience with the product actually is. I've seen that be true, whether you're selling jeans or mattresses or billing invoices, as you were talking about. So that's an important question of understanding what is your user's definition of success, and are you designing for that? And I think this relates a lot back to dating around, what is really success in dating? What will make you happy at this point in your life?
Yes, because when I first started dating, that app design, particularly the Tinder, was really influenced how I dated. Right, you swipe right, you swipe left. It was very superficial decisions, and it led to many bad dates and way too much go. I know, but it's because those dating apps weren't designed to help you date. They were just designed to make matches, and they were bad matches at that. And what I really wanted was a relationship, and the dating apps weren't helping me to be successful in achieving a relationship until this last time when I met Zeke on Hinge.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned Hinge, because I have seen ads from Hinge that all around how they are the dating app meant to be deleted. And I think that's so interesting that in their marketing, they're acknowledging, what is really success for the user. And it's actually that they don't need this product anymore. So, I think that's interesting how, can a dating app position itself as a successful matchmaking app, but also, like you were saying, dating app isn't really for dating. It's just that initial connection. So could there be a way that UX could be applied to kind of post matchmaking? Could you use technology or services to actually help you date more successfully? So interesting thought. I think interesting topic for another time. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But I had a lot of fun chatting with you, Raelin and Dan, around UX and hearing about your dating life and successes in recent years. And we hope for all of you listening, this has been an interesting and fun way to look at IA and UX and dating, and that it sparks some curiosity in you when thinking about UX and dating, or both. So thanks so much for coming to hear our thoughts on IA in real life, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.